And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this overview of the Executive Master of Human Resources Management. We call it EMHRM here. A lot of people struggle with how to pronounce that. I'm Susan Beauregard. I'm the director of EMHRM here at the ILR School. And I'm joined today by Chris Collins, who's professor in the Human Resources Studies Department, and he's one of the guiders and actually founders of this program originally. And with me also are Marissa Porter, who opened the meeting. Marissa directs graduate studies and the student experience here at the ILR School, and Heidi Russell, who's the coordinator of the EMHRM program and who many of you actually probably have spoken with already. Glad to have a great turnout today. What we'll do is run through the charts very briefly to give you a better understanding of how the program works, and then we'll take questions at the end. So I would ask that you enter your questions as we go along, just enter them and we'll take them at the end of the call. All right, great. So with that, we'll start. What we want to cover today is what you'll be learning in the program and how, and then who you'll be learning with, because we consider that to be one of the most secret ingredients of this entire program is how you learn. And then we'll talk at the end about our admissions process and timeline and take your questions. Next slide, please. So this program is set up with a particular arc of learning, and uniquely, it begins with business strategy because we believe in order to be great HR partners, you really have to understand the business. So you can see there, we begin with traditional business-oriented classes, learning about strategy and competition and financials. In the fall and winter session, you then transition to learning more about the strategic HR tools that we use as we go along in our careers. So in-depth coverage of things like talent acquisition or org design. And then finally, in the spring, we wind up talking about really how to implement change in the HR function. So you learn all about different tools for conflict resolution and design thinking and project leadership. So again, how to begin with the business problem, apply HR techniques, and then drive real change. Next slide, please. Now, the learning takes place in three ways, and I'll cover each of these briefly. There's online coursework, which enables you to do this work while you maintain your job. There are 3 on-campus residential weeks in Ithaca. And finally, your capstone case project that you work on all along as you progress through the program. Next slide, please. So the online coursework is a fairly standard model. It actually has you learning online in Cornell's Canvas system, and the courses take place in 2-week sprints. So when you go into a class, you'll start a class on a Sunday night, and you'll work in 2 weeks. It has components of video learning. These are Cornell faculty teaching the content. And then you're interacting with your classmates and faculty in seminar discussions and on discussion boards where you're responding to prompts posed by the instructor. And then there's usually a small 1-page paper, a couple of page paper involved to kind of encapsulate all the learnings. Flip this slide, please. And then you'll come to campus. These usually are the highlight of the program for people. So you'll start learning online in May. And then you'll meet for the first time on campus in August with your cohort, who by then you'll probably already know fairly well. The groups always have a running WhatsApp where they're all chattering back and forth. And of course, they've been conversing online in the discussion boards as well. So they come together and we spend a full week together. So we start Saturday at noon on that first weekend, and we work all week until everybody goes home Friday afternoon. And the composition of those weeks is a combination of learning directly with those faculty members who you've been online with. It's also hearing from CHROs from member companies and other senior leaders who come in and talk about their real experience. So, for example, at this last session in August, we had Cathy Desquez, who's the CHRO at Swiss Re, come in, and she talked about her career and very candidly about some of her experiences and lessons learned along the way. And then, of course, there's the peer learning component. You're working at tables all week. It's not a lecture week. It's really breakout groups and working on cases posed by the faculty and group discussion. Next slide, please. And then the capstone. I know some people get very worried about the capstone and will it be hard and how do I think of a good project? But it's really not hard, because what we ask people to do is pick a project that you're already working on, a business issue that your business is working on, an opportunity, and begin to apply some of your learnings as we go through the 15 months together. You're coached by 2 advisors, a faculty member, so one of the professors, and a senior outside executive. So we have 3 of those. They're each assigned to work with individual students, and of course with your peers. And people ask, what kind of projects might I bring? And there's some examples here on the right. So We had, for example, a major retailer who was working through engagement in a really COVID-stressed climate. It's an e-tailer, really. We had someone else in a medical services company working because their business model was changing from clinic to home care, and what kind of employees and work structures did they need. So I'll let you look at those, but the variety of projects is interesting. And I think the variety of project, again, brings more flavor to this cohort-based learning as you hear what your peers are working on. Next slide, please. And that comes down to the group. So your classmates, one of the things that I think for me has been the most enjoyable is working with the mix of students in these classes. So we look for 8 years, probably as a floor for some HR experience, but the range of the class is about 10 to 20 years working in the HR field. And then you're learning from those people again at those tables, working in those residential sessions, seeing their responses to the discussion board prompts and exchanging ideas with each other back and forth. And as I mentioned, they always have a very active side dialogue going in WhatsApp where they're already beginning to ask each other for ideas about issues that they're experiencing at work and sharing back and forth. And of course, I mentioned the faculty who you'll interact with both in your courses, but also then in turn on campus where you'll really get to know them much better and as advisors to your capstone project. The practitioners come in, almost all of them invite people to please join them on LinkedIn and connect to create these enduring relationships. Many of those senior folks who come onto campus are Cornell graduates themselves, so they're very committed to the growth of students, and or they have some other really special relationship with GE or with Cornell that they want to participate with. And finally, we bring in some other Cornell experts on executive communication, persuasive speech, and decision-making so that we beef up that side of people's executive skills as well. Next slide, please. And just before I turn this over to Chris, I will say that the faculty at Cornell are fabulous. They are really doing world-class cutting-edge research on contemporary issues. So for example, Brad Bell, who you see there, has just completed some very interesting research on how to make hybrid teams effective. In the post-COVID environment, that's a permanent reality. And Brad is working with major companies to have a look at what's working well. And you can see the other faculty members here. They're working on a range of research. They're working with different businesses and consulting relationships. So it's a great mix of academic constructs and real-world applications that they can bring into the classroom with us. So next slide, please. Oh, one more on this too. I mentioned some of these folks who've come to speak in class, and one of the things I would say, so Nicole Lamoureux came recently. She was there with us actually in August. And what she spoke to the class about was AI and its application. This is
I think Susan may have froze. Chris, do you want to step in here quick?
Yeah, sure. So I think what Susan was going to say is when Nicole joined us in August, she brought in some content in terms of what IBM has been thinking about in terms of AI in HR and use cases of how they've thought about where AI makes sense, how AI can really impact us as a function when that comes to more information. Really categorizing, I think, from her perspective, is they think about it more as augmented intelligence that really helps us with decision making as opposed to artificial intelligence that makes the decision for us. So really great to get someone like Nicole, the head of HR of a 300,000 person company that's clearly a leader in this space, right? So that's the kind of people we hope to expose you to. I do think every year that list changes a little bit depending on who's able to make it to campus, what are some of the hot topics we're dealing with that particular year in terms of the HR function and businesses in general. Many of the people, in fact, 3 of the 4 pictures you see there are all Cornell alums. So we are pretty lucky here, I think, in terms of the alums we can call on to do these things. We also have a little bit of an advantage, I think, because we have a large center here called the Center for Advanced HR Studies, where we have about 50 companies and have long-standing relationships with many of them. Most of those are what I would characterize as global Fortune 500 kind of companies. So we often can draw on those companies to help send speakers on particular topics. So it's a great way to enrich the program. I think one of the things Susan was showing you is just the richness of the learning. And so, and again, I think about as we designed the program, some of the really key aspects to it were we know how busy you are as executives. Taking this time out to learn, we wanted to make sure that the format really fits your learning needs, right? So the bulk of this being asynchronous to fit your needs in fitting into your busy lives with parents, kids, day job, pets, all the other things you're trying to do in your life. And then those 3 on-week campus events are really about increasing the opportunity for the networking, the face-to-face learning, the interactions with faculty and executives. The richness of that is, again, I think the blend of those 2 learning styles, really important to fit your needs, but also we really try and fit the content to what content fits best in online learning formats, which content and which speakers are best in more of the face-to-face, and really thinking about then leveraging the in-cohort learning. And Susan mentioned this, but I think one of the best parts of this program is the diversity of people we have in the program, but that you're all coming into this with some pretty significant experience, so that when you're sharing and benchmarking and helping each other out with projects or ideas, you're really getting that experience equivalent of what you've been seeing, but from very different perspectives, different industries, different regions, different countries. Really helps to solidify the learning from the coursework, but also creates a long time and maybe lifelong network to learn from as you move forward in your job. I think the second part of that learning really is the breadth of the faculty. And when Susan put up that slide, she had 4 of our faces. I always wish mine wasn't up there, but she included mine. The 4 of us are 4 of about 18 faculty who are actively involved in the program. And so we come from, again, a variety of backgrounds. There's a few folks from the labor relations, negotiations, dispute resolution group here that teach in the program. I think there's 6 or 7 of us from the HR studies department, another 5 or 6 from organizational behavior. Really, again, gives you this breadth of faculty who are doing research, teaching in different areas. For many of us, though, again, because of the center, it's not just academic learning. We're also bringing that practical experience of the companies that we've been working with, talking with, having meetings with over the years that really add depth to the learning that we hope to bring to the classroom. And then again, the picture here is, again, the notion of it's not just us, it's not just you learning from each other, but really bringing in top world-class leaders from the top of the house at these big companies and different industries to share cutting edge of what they're doing in their places. So again, I think that mix of those really good. The third component to this learning, which Susan also mentioned, is the project. And to me, the project is maybe the most important part of the design because it really grounds the learning. And we did that because we often noticed, particularly with executives, that you're so busy. And when you get into these 2-week sprints, as she called them, for the online coursework, is you can often fail to really sink in or let the content sink in and become part of your permanent memory and set of tools to solve problems with for the rest of your life. So the project really is that home that's a forcing function that makes you think about what you learned that 2-week sprint, what you learned over the 4-month sprint of online courses and in person, and how do you apply it back to something so it becomes a permanent part of your learning structure. And so those projects really, to me, are the essence of how you ground the learning in the practical day-to-day of your lives. The beauty of that project design as well is you're paired with 1 faculty member and 1 executive that can really help you think through what tools might be the right fit. Are there other ways to think about the problem you're facing? What are some of the practical realities you might be wrestling with? So again, I think the richness of that set of approaches, the online, the face-to-face, and the project, really create a learning environment that's, I think, hard to find anywhere else in the world. So maybe I'll stop there because I'm sure there'll be a bunch of questions. And now that Susan's back with us, turn it back to you.
Susan, if you would like me to stay on this page, I can, or we can just.
No, go ahead, flip on
Okay.
it. That's great. Thank you. And Chris, you can probably chime in here. I think one of the most interesting things that we have going here is the mix of people in the class and the fact that they're here for different reasons, which is interesting. Some of them want to earn this degree because obviously the Cornell degree on their resume is a great credential to have. And some of them come in, they say, well, I've worked for one company for 20 years. I want to expand my network, or I want to see some new perspectives on things. We've got specialists who maybe are deep in one, thing, talent management or talent attraction, who want to get out to a more broad CHRO role. Some people want to contemporize their skills. They've been out of school for a long time. And others, it's just been a lifelong goal to challenge themselves and take something on. But the common outcome here that we're seeing is this has real impact. People will say to themselves, and you'll see it in the videos on our site, I'm a different person. I have more self-confidence in business dialogues. I'm more comfortable to take on a stretch assignment because I've been pushed and I did it and I have new skills. I have a great network of new friends and from different industries and places around the world that I know I can draw on. And we see many, most of them move very soon into bigger roles, either at their current company or at another company. The statistics are wonderful. So this is an investment of time. It's a big stretch for, time and investment, but it is a massive investment with a great payback. So next slide, Chris. I don't know if you want to add anything to that payback notion, but.
Yeah, I think you hit on some of the big ones. So, we prime you a lot throughout the program in terms of the impact of the program in terms of your current role. So again, tying this back to projects at your current company is, I think, really helps you to escalate your performance in the current role. But a lot of it, again, I think, as Susan mentioned, is really about building the skill set, the confidence, the network that's going to really help you excel going forward, whether that's at your current company, at new companies. Maybe the biggest impact, I think, is that network of people that you're here with. So it's that cohort you come in with. You're going to commiserate the first few months as you go through online classes because it's not easy. This is going to be a challenge to get the work done and do it to the level you want it to do it at. So you're going to really build that camaraderie. The friendships that build in that first on-week session are amazing. And what we still see is groups that were here 9 years ago still get together once or twice a year. They've got learning circles that they bounce ideas off of each other. And that, to me, is the biggest long-term gain, is the further you get up in this function, the lonelier the job gets. There's fewer people you can talk to about the challenges, fewer and fewer inside your own company you can share this with. And so having this network of other great leaders that you've got this deep bond with is going to give you all these opportunities for bouncing ideas, testing out potential paths forward, career advice, whatever it might be. That to me is the longest term impact, is the network.
I agree. And also access to the broader network. The Cornell ILR school has a huge network of alumni. And once you're an ILR alum from this program, you're an ILR alum and have access to the many programs that they run as well. And this EMHRM network now is getting bigger and more active across the classes, which has tremendous opportunity in it that we're starting to see. So it's exciting. Right, next
Before
page.
we go on to the next slide, I'm wondering, Susan or Chris, if you could speak to, and Susan, I kind of direct this at you because you've mentioned it to me, as when students come in and they're coming to Ithaca for the first residential session, and then they work through then the second residential session and then the final, what sorts of things do you see change in the students as a cohort from the first to the final?
Yeah, I always marvel at it. I think it's really a wonderful thing. So as the students write their first part, say, of the capstone paper, they struggle at first to start from that business vantage point, completely back away from their HR toolkit and say, what is my business opportunity? They quickly morph and change the way they come at problems. And we start to see the critical thinking evolving. We start to see real application as opposed to kind of, I have a solution first. And so we see that. But the other thing we see developing is confidence. I just see and think of so many students who come in not realizing how talented they were, how special they were. And they start to realize that over the course of this class, add a few more tools and they're just take off. So I like that. Chris, I don't know what your point of view is on their change.
Well, one thing I think that changes is typically what we see is that first week everyone's booked their own individual hotel room for the week.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
by the end, they're sharing houses. There's 4 or 5 of them getting VRBO or whatever together. And so in terms of the camaraderie, that, there's some of that that's built in those first few online courses. But as we all know, virtual is harder to build relationships. After that first week, it's like you've got an additional 30 brothers and sisters, right? So it's really the impact of being here together and what the group looks like from that first day where it's almost like all the freshmen coming into college together. No one knows each other. Everyone's a little nervous. There's a little bit of that feel to this group when they come in. By the time you leave, everyone knows each other's kids,
Dogs,
partners, parents, dogs. Like, it is amazing how strong the cohort is in terms of the bond that they make. So that to me is like, in terms of the most shocking, visible piece of this, that's the top for me.
It's true. This past weekend, actually, the class of 23 who just graduated in July in that horrible rainy weather, a bunch of them drove to New Haven. There were 20 people in the group, family members too, to sit through the Yale football game. So it's like, I think that stickiness is wonderful, and it will serve them professionally and personally, both. All right. Yes, sir. Marissa, do you want to go over the timeline? Why don't you pick that up? I think that's great.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we've talked about, what the program looks like, but how do you actually move through it, right? So it's a 15-month program. We start in May. And so that's a little bit different for people who are looking at other graduate programs that start in August. This is a pretty fast turnaround from admission to start, which is actually pretty good because you're already in that mindset of, I'm going to start a graduate program and I'm really excited about it. And now you don't have to wait until August. You get to start in May. So we'll do an online kind of kickoff orientation. We'll bring everyone on board and really go through the logistics of, okay, this is how your online learnings are going to work. We'll walk you through we utilize Canvas and some other sites. So we would walk you through all of those. And then you jump right into your first set of online classes. And, there is a learning curve to online learning if you haven't done it. And so there's a little bit of assistance that we can help you with kind of getting used to that. And I think something to note is through the entire 15 months, the 4 of us and actually Heidi in particular will be really helpful for helping students think about becoming students again. Many of you will have been long off of the academic trail. And so we know that it's a little bit of a learning curve. And so that first, May through July will be kind of when you settle in as students and you start taking online classes. And then you come in for your first residential session. And that will be, hopefully beautiful in the summer months in July and August are the 2 summer residential sessions. And then one of them is going to be in March. And so you can get an array of weather, but we like to showcase all of what Ithaca and Cornell has to offer. So you come for your first, you're here for a week. You really get to know each other. You get to listen to a number of executive speakers. You get to know Susan a lot better and all of us here on campus. And then you go off and you start online classes again. And so you take what you've learned in the residential session and really start applying those in your online classes. Throughout this time, you're working on little tidbits of the capstone project. And so again, there will be prompts and we'll kind of help you understand what those are, but you're working on your capstone in little segments kind of throughout the whole 15 months. Then after the next set of online coursework, you'll come back for your next residential session, go through the same thing again, but with another set of speakers, higher level learning, and Susan plans a really great week for you every time. And I can absolutely promise you will not be bored during any of the 3 weeks that you're here on campus. She will keep you engaged and keep you going the entire time. And then
You're
Heidi
scaring them now.
Yeah, Heidi will swing by usually with some ice cream and fun things to kind of level things out. Then you'll again go home, finish your online coursework, and then you'll come back for the 3rd week in the last month. And then at the end of that 3rd residential week, you graduate. And so there will be some capstone stuff to tie up after the graduation, but it really runs pretty quickly. And we want you to know that in advance. Once you get started, it's pretty much ongoing the whole time. And so making sure that your focus is there and that you're ready to come to campus when the residential sessions happen and that you've got all of your tech lined up for your online learning is really important. But Susan, Chris, go ahead and jump in if there's more.
I just think it'd be good, Chris, you teach a lot during those residential weeks, and I think it's important for people to understand like how the teaching part goes. And it's very much not lecture. Maybe you could share a little bit about some of the things you do that week.
Oh boy. What do I do? That's a good question. So I think the normal style, and not to categorize everyone as the same, but we definitely follow the model of adult learning. So we always keep that in mind, knowing that adults don't learn the way that our undergrads do, and that if we talk to you for more than about 20 minutes straight, we're going to start to see wandering attention, eyes down on cell phones versus paying attention. So the style of most of the courses are some combination of short lecture filled with then exercises, role plays, cases, opportunities to immediately apply it together in small groups as larger discussions. So it's a pretty active week in that you're definitely learning new concepts, new models, new theory to think about how to wrestle with problems in your organizations. But it's also very practical in terms of the application in immediate ways, so that you're not just sitting there as passive learners, because we know that would be deadly. So, for me, one of the pieces that I teach, particularly in the last session I'll have you with, is HR leadership concepts. We talk about things like courage, making difficult conversations, giving tough feedback to senior leaders, coaching at the executive level. And I have about 9 cases, mini cases that we work through, that where sometimes you'll take roles, you'll be the HR leader, or someone else will play the difficult to coach senior line leader. And it gives you real hands-on practice of doing these things, and then a chance to debrief, talk about what went well, what didn't go well, how would you do it differently in the future. So again, really, some combination of, theory models with a lot of hands-on practice.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. And the students also love the peer learning that happens because you sit at tables of 5 and we change tables every day so that you're working with different people, and anything you're chewing on, a case or simulation, anything like that, you're just hearing a different point of view every day, which is great. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Next slide.
All right. I think this is back to me.
Yep, back to you.
And I will invite Heidi to jump in if I miss anything, because quite frankly, Heidi will be the one that most of you engage with during the admissions process. So all of this can be found on our website, and I'll really urge you to go look over our website for admissions information, because we keep it fully up to date at all times, and there's a link right to the application from there. But just some basic overview of what's required. The GRE and GMAT is not required, nor is it accepted. So this is important to highlight. We're not accepting it this year, which means that even if you do take it, you won't be able to send it to us. In past years where it's been optional, there was a little bit of question of, well, if I do take it, does it give me a bump up? So it's just not accepted this year. So don't worry about that. You will have to submit unofficial transcripts from any academic programs that you've taken in the past. And so being that many of you are quite a few years out from undergrad or possibly other programs that you've taken, I would start thinking about this early, because it may take some time for you to request those and get them in the mail and be able to upload them into your online application portal. A note on that, we don't take anything in paper anymore. So everything is in one application portal. So if you do have paper copies, that's fine. All you do is simply take a picture on your phone and you can upload it right from there, or on your computer or iPad or something. But again, any questions on how you go through the application process or how you upload things, direct them right at Heidi and we can help you. An updated resume, and I say updated because that is so important. Old resumes won't be helpful to us. Resumes that are updated at the point that you're applying for the program are really, really necessary, because like Susan said, we do expect that everyone in this program will have 8 years or more of HR experience. And so we really need to get a full grasp of what you've done in the professional setting. And then you're going to need 2 letters of recommendation. And we can talk more on this because there are some questions coming in, and maybe Susan will just do that now. Can you speak to who the letters of recommendation should come from? Because there are 2 questions that are asking that, and then 3 more were emailed.
Okay, wow, okay, sure. So obviously the letter of recommendation that would be most helpful to us is someone who's actually worked with you in the relatively recent past and can speak to your leadership style, to your work experiences and so forth. If it's an academic recommendation, that's good, but if it's really a long time ago, obviously not as helpful.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then we do have a couple of statements that you're going to need to write. So the statement of project is one, and I think Susan will be able to give kind of a more broad overview on that. But this is really, and please, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of like your idea of a project that you're hoping to work on as a capstone project. And so this gives us a little bit more insight into what you're seeking out of this program and what you're really coming to us in hopes of acquiring, the skills that you would need to handle this project. And then you also need to write the academic statement of purpose, which is different, and there is a prompt on that in the application, but these are 2 different statements, so just know that you will have to write both. And Susan, if you want to give any more specifics on the project piece, go for it.
Yeah, maybe Chris can comment on this as well, because we do know, like, you're applying now to graduate in July of 2024. So very few business projects are sustained for that long a period of time. You may have a project priority change at work. You may change jobs, something else may come up. So what we're looking for in this statement is just to see how you think in terms of what a project might be, to see that you come from a business point of view, and how you would approach it. We understand very much, so don't agonize over that your project may change before you show up or after you show up. Chris, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's a good prompt in the application that they'll be able to see. But again, what we're looking for is ideally, right, if given the current company you're working for, what's some big project that you'd be thinking about taking on? How would you think about how our learnings can help you move that project forward? And again, it's really for us to see that you're thinking at the level that we think is appropriate for an executive master's program. They always change. Like I've yet to see in 10 years anyone's original project that they wrote for their application be the exact same thing they delivered 14 months later. Because life changes, your insights to what the problem might be are going to change based on the tools, models, perspectives from your learning. You might move jobs. So, don't feel wedded to that, but it's really a chance for you to think about, if you had the opportunity, how would you impact your organization based on the learning that you're going to take out of this program? That's how I think about that project.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you both. And then international applicants do have to take a language exam. And so this again is on our website in much more detail. So if you are an international applicant, then you should go right to the website and look at that and more details about what this program is open to as far as eligibility. And then finally, the video interview. This is a very important part of the application, and it's important for me to note that the application is not complete or reviewable until the video interview is also completed. So it's a set of, I'm thinking back now, I think it's 6 questions, and they're about 1.5 minute, 2-minute responses, and they're pretty basic, but we want to kind of, again, gauge what you're looking for in the program and what you can bring to the cohort. So make sure that you do complete the video interview in the timeline that is given. I believe it's 1 week after you submit the application, you're given to complete the video interview. And then I'm seeing a couple of questions pop up about admissions, and I know we'll do Q&A at the end, but I think I'm going to touch on these right now. So are admissions decisions rolling, or will we submit them in batches after each deadline? We will generally submit them in batches after each deadline, because we'll review kind of in chunks at these deadlines. And then the other question is there any advantage to applying in an early round of the application due dates? And the answer is yes. There's more of a priority review in the first 2 applications. To speak on, one of the other questions I'm seeing is size of cohort. We do need to be thoughtful on the size of the cohort that we're bringing in. And so there are only a certain number of potential seats available. So yes, if you can get your application in early, then there is a benefit to that. All right.
While we're on it, so one of the other questions, so again, I've been around this program for a long time, since it started. One of the questions we always get is, so what is your preferred profile? And the answer to that is we don't have one, because what we're really trying to look to do every year is build a really diverse class. So people, some specialists, some HR business partners, some people who are out in the field, there are plants, people who may have had, specific client groups like sales, people may have been in HR information systems, whatever it might be. We're trying to build the wealth of knowledge that people are bringing to the program so that you're learning from each other. So we don't want to have everyone who's exactly 15 years, everyone's been a HR business partner and only been in large companies, because we think small company HR can learn from big, vice versa. People have been business partners certainly can learn from specialists and vice versa. So we're really looking for a wide mix. But again, I would agree with the point that earlier the better. Always a good thing to be early.
All right, great. Thank you. So I'll just put a plug in. Our first application deadline is October 15th, which is just around the corner. And then we'll have 2 more after that, which are right here. So December 15th and
Hey,
5th.
Marissa, one point to raise on the October 15th.
Mhm.
If your recommendations aren't in on October 15th, you're missing, an item. We do have a grace period for about a week or so,
Yep.
right? That's
Yep,
a tidy up. So
Yeah,
don't
that's a good
not
point.
apply
So,
for October 15th for that reason.
right. So you have control over what you have control over. Anything you can upload, that's what you have control over. That has to be submitted by the deadline. Anything that you don't have control over, we will give a grace period for of about a week. And so if you're getting towards the end of that week and your recommendation still hasn't submitted, that's on you to reach out to them and say, the deadline has passed. I really need you to upload this, but we will give you that grace period. That's correct.
Yeah.
All right. So you can always reach out to us at any time, and you can visit our website. As I said a couple of times, you'll get a lot of information on there, but we also have 2 great people for you to talk to through the process. And what that could mean is you're just trying to sort out if this program is right for you, or you're trying to sort out, I'm applying, I know I'm applying, but I'm having a technical issue. There's a wide array of what you could reach out to us for. So Heidi Russell, who's on the call with us today, is on here. And then we have another person named Renee, who you may hear from. And so both together are interacting and talking about the cohort that we're trying to build. And you can feel free to set up an appointment with them at any time.
Are there any other questions in the queue there, Marissa, that you want to?
Yeah, so we have a few. Let me see, let me pick one. So this person is wondering something that may be relevant to others too. They just recently transitioned to a new role, but within the same organization, but let's go with a new role. Should the current boss write the letter of recommendation, or the previous boss that likely knows them better in the professional space?
Definitely the previous.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think the hope is on these letters, which is, I think Susan may have said this, I've already forgotten. Happens at my advanced age. The idea behind the letters is that we really want to get a sense for how others see you as an HR leader. And so if you're working for someone, it's only been a couple of weeks, we know that takes much longer to actually build a strong relationship with the leaders you're supporting than a couple of weeks. I would definitely go with that. I would probably stray away from trying to track down your biology professor from sophomore year of undergrad, because they're not going to have much relevant to say about you. So I would stick with those people, whether that's your line leaders you supported or your HR leader that you report into, whoever that is, that can really tell us about their experience with you as a HR leader in your organization. Mm-hmm. That's the sweet spot for us.
Agree.
Great, thank you. All right, so there was another question. Can you explain the difference in learnings from an executive MBA and this program?
Yes, we're not an MBA.
Not an MBA. Yeah.
So there is, as Susan mentioned, upfront components where we really have made sure that we level set everyone on the business side. So again, the model we use to design this program is we 10 years ago or so worked with partner companies in our center to develop competency models for HR leadership. And so in talking to chief HR officers from those companies, a handful of CEOs, a handful of senior line leaders from out the business, we really came up with a model of what are the tasks, what are the key duties of what HR leaders do, and then underneath that, what are the key capabilities. And so what we heard from just about everyone, particularly the line leaders we talked to, is that what they really need from their HR folks is business acumen. When we dug into that, what do they really mean by business acumen is, are they well versed in how the company competes currently, how we might compete in the future, what are the big external factors that are putting pressure on our organization? Do you clearly understand the financial statements and understand how we make money or break even at this organization, or how we get our funding if we're a non-for-profit? So really, the first few courses are really geared on that aspect of business acumen, which has a lot of overlap with MBA. From that, though, most of the rest of the content is really structured around key HR components, whether that's executive comp, thinking about leadership development, organizational design, HR strategy. Susan mentioned some others around design thinking or so on. So really tools, theories that help you think about how do we influence to make sure we get right people, right place, right time, right cost. Think about how do we influence change and drive change. So the real difference is after the initial business acumen part, we gear much more towards building you as leaders and then building you as HR leaders. So you've got the right toolkit to really drive HR solutions that impact the business. So the biggest difference to me is the real focus on higher level HR acumen that really is hoping to prepare you guys to be senior leaders in organizations of all stripes.
And I would add two things to that, Chris. One is, if you think about the C-suite table, it's not populated by people who are all generalists. They are the deepest, most knowledgeable person about finance, legal, HR, and that's what we're building out, is to be that deepest expert. And the second thing I would add is that, again, that lifelong network of HR professionals. If you get an MBA, you'll have a lifelong network of mixed functional interest. If you come here, you have a lifelong network of people who are passionate about HR.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I am seeing a couple of questions pop up that are pretty, I think should be handled on a more one-to-one level. So what we're doing is we're actually going to take down these questions and reach out to you directly. And there was a question of if we can share the slides after. So we'll chat about that too, and talk about how we can get you the information and make sure that you can refer back. So if we don't answer your question in this call, it's because we're going to reach out to you. So at that, I'm not seeing other questions pop up that I think are proper to be handled in this full group, but yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, guys. I hope one of the things we've conveyed is our passion and enthusiasm for this program. I think it is amazing. I joined 2 years ago because I was so impressed by what was going on here, and the closer I get, the more impressed I am. The energy of the faculty, of the advisors, of the students in the class, our guest speakers is remarkable. And I just think that it's a rare opportunity to take 15 months, really invest in yourself and come out with skills, friends, new concepts, new thinking. It's a rare opportunity. So congrats for considering it. Hope to see some applications from this group. Chris, anything you want to add?
Just the last one that struck me is that when we talk about the cohort, one of the things we really haven't mentioned is size. And so in the last 4-ish years, it's probably as far back as I can think clearly, that this cohorts tended to be around 28 to 34 students. So we're not talking about you trying to become friends and colleagues with, a horde of 200, right? This is a really, pretty tight group because size-wise, we keep it small enough so that you're able to have voice in the in-person sessions, really voice up your thoughts and ideas, have the chance to interact with the faculty and speakers, but with each other, right? So it's a really chance to get to know each other really well versus, potentially joining a program with, 200 or 300 of your closest colleagues where you really don't get to know anybody. So I think the size is a special part of the program as well that we didn't really hit on.
I agree. So thanks everyone for dialing in today. Hope it was a good use of your time to understand our program a little bit better. Be sure to reach out to Heidi and Renee if you want to chat with us in any more depth, and we'll look forward to seeing some applications coming up soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.